Okay, so here we were. I'm going to show you how to do a mask, clipping mask, and it's actually been upgraded just recently. So anyway, so I would grab the pen tool here in the. Actually, before we start that, I need to remake this layer because this one's locked. I can even delete this, but sometimes people keep them and just take the eyeball off. So I guess I'll do that. Make sure you're on the right copy though, the one that doesn't have the lock symbol. If you do have one that's locked. Some reason, a lot of times when you bring in files, they're locked. And I will select the pen tool over here. If you hover over it, you'll see pen tool. So I would click here. This is a really easy clip too because it's all straight lines. So that's nice. So I would, and then come up here and just do mask. And it's super, super slick. That's a brand new thing I think that they've started because last time I did a mask, it was not that slick. You had to do a few more steps. And you can feather it. So, I mean, like if you go to selection, you can do a feather of it. I'm going to do 2 pixels because I just want to feather it out just a little bit. And then there's dancing ants, as you can see over the selection. So I might just do like a Command D to deselect. And then I'm going to grab the, oh, that's a dodge tool. I want the magnifying glass. Zoom in. I just want to look at the edge. So that's not too bad. And as far as the resolution on this image, if you do Control Option I or Command Option I, that'll go to image size, or you can go to File, is it image size here, and it'll tell you, what the resolution is. It's at 300 at 3x4, so I can't actually make this very big before this resolution will start to downgrade, but I can use it as a 3x4 at 300 dpi in my InDesign document. So it does it's not great, but it's not terrible. Grabbing the wrong thing again. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to zoom in on certain areas. I'm going to use the space bar to get my hand tool, hold that down and click and drag to get that to move around. So I'm just going to kind of fill in this 2 with the clone stamp if I can find it. They're always changing things in here, so I'm always kind of a little cautious. But so the clone stamp, click on that. Some of the options for the clone stamp tool are up here. I kind of just want to use a brush that is maybe hard. And this size is not terrible. I might actually go, well, maybe I'll go with like a bigger size. Ooh, that's too big. Maybe something like this. And I'm going to actually just take a clipping from here and just put it on this and just see how it goes. So I'm going to use that size brush. You can actually custom adjust the hardness. Like, so this is soft and this is hard here in this little window. So I'm going to hover over here, push Option or Alt on, I think Alt would be PC, but Option on a Mac. Click. So you can sample from this area. See how it's sampled that spot after I pushed Option click? It sampled that. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and put it over that. And that's not bad. I mean, if I go like, well, actually that's not so wonderful. Maybe we need to soften up the edge of that brush even more. And maybe I need to make it a little bigger. I thought it was gonna be easier to pull off, but maybe I need to dial it in a little bit more. That might be better. So Option click, and that's not bad. So, and you can make the opacity less and the flow less, but for this application, I don't really want to do that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I'll do the same with this one, and we'll just kind of go around and see what we can do. So I can definitely Option click this one, and actually that's kind of adding a little shadow in. Maybe I will adjust the hardness. Let's see, maybe. Maybe make it a little bit harder, just custom adjust it. And it's too big. I need to make it smaller on this one. The other one I didn't notice it as much, but, and actually I can just, it doesn't need to be exact. Actually that doesn't look so good. I'm trying to cut corners here and it's not really, I'm going to take the opacity and the flow down a little bit just to kind of help feather it even more. Maybe make the size a little bit bigger. Option click. Maybe just kind of, I don't know, borrowing from this one. That's not too bad. Nothing here is going to be, nothing that I'm doing here is going to be like maybe as good as like, you know, some of the stuff I might do freelance as far as design work goes. But I mean, this stuff is really just for the sake of, you know, giving you guys kind of an example. See, and since I have my opacity turned down, and that's not perfect, but it's not bad. Since I have my opacity turned down, I have to click a couple different times in order for it to work. So I'm going to have to sample from, you know, another way of doing this was I could turn down the size like quite a bit and actually sample from the same circle. So if I sample from over here, option click, and kind of just click a bunch of times to kind of cover this, disguise this a bit. And since the opacity and the flow is turned down, so that's not too bad. And then up here, we want to get rid of this text up here. So I'm going to zoom in there, use my space bar, click and drag. So I can finish out these circles here. Use the clone stamp tool, option click, maybe just kind of something like this maybe would be good. Option and click here. I don't know, just kind of roughly. I mean, this is going to be pretty rough, but, and then I'll bring down the size even more so I can kind of, I'm going to zoom into, or Command plus. Quick way of doing it without having to switch over to a different tool. Spacebar for the hand. Bring the size down. I'm going to custom bring it down to like 7. Oop, 7. And then I'm going to do option click here. I'm going to turn this up. And you know, we can sample from here and just bring this line down. It's kind of slick. Yeah, and so just go through and, you know, try and get rid of these, which is something that you probably wouldn't have to do always, but this is just some of the things. Some of the images that you're gathering are obviously not going to be perfect or ready to go right out of the gate for your design. So bringing them into Photoshop and altering them so that they're ready to go for your application and InDesign that you're using them for. I mean, this is just standard Photoshop stuff, you know, stuff that a kind of an application of how, kind of an example of how a designer would use Photoshop on a daily basis. They're not necessarily obviously building their posters or their brochures with Photoshop, but they are using it to help to construct layouts by, you know, using it as an image manipulation software is basically what it is. And it's not always just photography. Sometimes it's scanned images like this or stuff you pulled off the web, as long as it's not copyrighted. And if it is, you need to bring it into Photoshop and change it enough so you can use it without having to worry about getting sued. You have to change it enough so that visually it looks a lot different from the original, which is doable. Definitely done it myself before. So I'm going to change the size of this. This is actually kind of getting pretty boring now. you guys, I'm sure, because I'm just rambling away and clicking a lot. But option, just push to option. I'm sampling the blue here. Oop, I'm getting into the other color, which isn't good. I'll have to make it smaller again because it's pretty tight in this little area. I'm just doing a kind of a perfectionist, but I'm trying to be quick about it also at the same time, so you guys get the idea. All right, well, that's pretty good. Command 0. Yeah, it's not perfect. I mean, you can kind of see some imperfections there, but for the most part, pretty happy with that. So I'll do a file save, and I want to go into desktop or documents. So I don't have a folder started yet for this, so I'm gonna go into my documents, and I'm gonna create a new folder in my documents, and I'm gonna name this appropriately. So if I need to find it, and better yet, 350. So this will be the name of the folder. I don't know if it'll let me use an ampersand, but I should know that, but I'm not sure. So create, and then we can go in here and label this like, how about diamond shape underscore. You could do full color for, you know, or if it's in black and white, BW. I'm going to just put CMYK because that's what I always do, which means it's in CMYK color mode, which we haven't checked yet, but we're going to go ahead and save this as a Photoshop file because the Photoshop file will actually preserve the clip and the layers. If we were to save it as a JPEG, we would lose all the layers, and the transparency would be lost. It would turn white again. So we don't really want to do that. We could save it as a PNG, which would be a smaller file size, and that would actually preserve the transparency that we have here. But we're going to do Photoshop, and we're going to push save. So that's going to go inside of our new folder. That's really well, and actually maybe this should have gone inside of that. But anyway, you get the gist of what I'm talking about here. And just push save. Okay. And then image size, we need to check and make sure we already did that. Okay, that looks decent. Image mode, it's in RGB because I pulled it off the web, which I kind of frown upon because normally most images you pull off the web are low resolution, but this one actually isn't too bad. So do as I say, not as I do necessarily, but make sure it's CMYK color mode. I don't want to merge my layers because I want to preserve my layers, so I said don't merge, push OK, and check again. It's in CMYK now. So, and then do Command S or File Save, whichever you prefer, which I already saved, so it's gray, and that'll kind of save your file out with the CMYK color mode. So that's one thing you guys need to do is make sure that you're in CMYK color mode, and make sure that your images are high resolution. And that's kind of, the clipping mask is probably, you're going to be doing that a lot in Photoshop, I'm sure. So, all right, that's the end of this video.